There is a mountain in Upper Tuscany that rises steep above the woods of the Casentino. It is La Verna, a great spur of gray rock split by deep clefts, covered with beeches and firs, beaten by the wind and often wrapped in fog. A lord of those parts, Count Orlando of Chiusi, had given it to Francis some years before so that he might find silence there. In the August of 1224, Francis climbs it for the last time. He is a little more than 40 years old, but his body is already spent, his eyes diseased, his strength reduced. He wants to spend up there the Lent of St. Michael, that fast of 40 days which his brotherhood kept between the middle of August and the end of September, in preparation for the feast of the Archangel. On the mountain he keeps apart from everyone. He has a shelter of branches built for himself beyond a fissure, in a spot reached by crossing over a log laid down like a bridge, and he asks that no one come to him except Brother Leo, and only at fixed hours, bringing a little bread and water. Leo is the closest companion of those years, the one Francis calls his little Lamb of God. It is he who is the source of much of what we know of these days, and this matters, because it sets apart the direct witness from the stories born afterward. What happens toward the Feast of the Cross, in the middle of September, is told by the oldest sources in agreement upon the heart of it. Thomas of Celano, who writes the first life a few years after the death of Francis, and then the testimonies gathered from the companions, report that during those days of prayer, while Francis was contemplating the Passion of Christ, 5 marks appeared upon his body. The hands and the feet bore the holes of the nails, and at the side a wound as of a lance, which at times would bleed. It is, as far as the historical record allows us to say, the first witness of a human body marked in this way. Before Francis, no cases are known to have been described, and this makes of La Verna not a devout episode among many, but a precise and new point in history. The oldest sources, however, stay sober about the particulars. They tell of the marks, they tell of the pain and of the reserve with which Francis hid them as long as he could. The most famous scene, that of the seraph with 6 wings and with the figure of the crucified within it, descending from the sky and pressing in the wounds, appears early in the biographies, but in forms that vary from one to another. Already here care is needed. One thing is what Leo and the companions saw upon the body of their father. Another is the way in which the later generations imagined the how, down to the flowered pages of the little flowers, written more than a century afterward, where every detail becomes a painting. The fact remains. Its visual explanation is in good part the construction of the devotion that came later. In those same days on La Verna, a thing very small and very precious comes to be. Precious because no one merely tells of it, we can still see it. Brother Leo was passing through a season of inner torment, and he asked Francis for a word that might sustain him. Francis took a piece of parchment and wrote upon it with his own hand, first, a text of praise to God, brief lines that we call the praises of God Most High, where he repeats, "You are the good, all good, the highest good. You are love, you are wisdom, you are humility." Then on the opposite side of the sheet, he wrote for Leo a blessing, taking up almost to the letter the ancient blessing that in the Bible the priest gave to the people. "May the Lord bless you and keep you." And above those words he traced a great sign, the letter tau, which has the shape of a cross without the upper part. That sign was for Francis the signature and the emblem of his whole life, cross and last letter, the humility of one who stands at the bottom. That parchment exists. Leo carried it with him for the rest of his days. He sewed it inside the lining of his habit as a relic is kept, and he noted himself in the margin the circumstances in which Francis had written it. It has come down to us and is preserved at Assisi in the sacred convent. It is the Chartula, and it is one of the very few things we possess written by the hand of Francis himself, a man who called himself ignorant and who was not a priest. To keep one's gaze on that small sheet means to have before us, without intermediaries, his uncertain handwriting, the sign of the Tau, the love of a father for a son in crisis. Here lies the sense of these days on the rock. La Verna is not the place of a wonder to be put on show, but the point at which a man, worn out and almost blind, comes all the way to the bottom of the desire that had guided his whole existence, to resemble the poor and crucified Christ, not in words but in the flesh. And in the same moment hidden, he writes to a brother who suffers a few lines to tell him that God keeps him. The greatness and the tenderness on the same mountain in the same days. Francis comes down from La Verna toward the end of September, on the back of a donkey because he can no longer walk. Less than 2 years of life are left to him, and they will be years of sickness and of an almost total darkness of the eyes. And yet it is in that season of pain that he will compose the most luminous page he has left us. In the next chapter, we will follow him to San Damiano, sick and blind, while he dictates in the common tongue the Canticle of the Creatures.